Cyber Reapers. Hello, Cyber Reapers. So, tonight or today, whenever, wherever you are, I would like to talk about a book. Now, I've got a fantasy romance for you tonight, or maybe a fantasy with romance in it. I don't know. Depends on how you interpret the story, I think. But yeah, as a little update, I sprained my ankle last week, so I've been mostly stationary, so I've had time to read, which was really nice. Although it has hindered other aspects of my life, I am glad for the reading time, you know? Yeah, so let's talk about one of the books I read while I was sitting down for a while. Now this one is Until the Clock Strikes Midnight. Until the Clock Strikes Midnight by Alechia Dow. Now I'll give you an opportunity to look at the cover. It's cute, I love it. It's the main two characters with a castle, very fun. Yeah. So this story was so super cute, and I'd been anticipating it for a while actually, because I've read other books by Alechia Dow before, and those were more like science fiction fantasy, but they had romance in them, and I absolutely loved the representation, and the romance was super cute, and just all the world building. So when I saw that there was another book coming out by Alechia Dow, I was going, oh yes, amazing. I look forward to reading it. But then it kind of went to the back of my mind for a while. And all of a sudden, you know, I was looking the other day for a book to read, and I noticed that it was available as an ebook at the library. And I was going, oh yay, I get to read this now. And read it I did. I read it in 2 days. And I love it. I love it so much. I love it so much. Now let me talk about why. To actually introduce the setup, let me first move the duck back, because the duck fell on my head all of a sudden. Are you gonna be stationary? Let's see. I'm trying not to move too much, because again, my ankle is sprained. It's a lot better than it was, but I still don't want to move it all that much if I can help it. Okay, I think everything's stationary now. So let's talk about the plot, because there's a lot of magical elements, but I'll try to just kind of explain the stuff that I think is necessary for me to talk about the most interesting, marketable-y stuff, I guess, and let you read the rest, because there is a decent amount of world building here. But the plot itself really comes down to a magical rivals to lovers sort of story that focuses around how uplifting an entire community is needed to uplift a single person. So, with that in mind, let's talk about what the premise actually is. The premise. So, there is... Let's just talk about these beings for a second. They are celestial beings. They're immortal. And what they do is they kind of shift mortals' decisions a little bit. They shift their lives so that mortals will proceed down a path. Now, most of the time, what celestials are trying to do is either direct mortals away from a unhappily ever after by directing them to a ordinary ever after. So going from like an unhappy life to an okay life, a stable life. Either doing that miles away from an ordinary ever after, the okay life, to a happily ever after. And there are primarily two groups of celestials that do this. There's, there are the misfortunes, and those guide the less happy people to a, stable life. And then there are the guardians, which guide the, kind of stable life people to a happy life. But, happy risks chaos. An ordinary stable life is not as chaotic. So there's benefits to either, and it really just depends on what kind of mindset you have, whether you're more of a guardian or a misfortune. Yeah. So that's kind of our setup of, alright, here's the magical system that's kind of in place, right? The guardians and the misfortunes, which are both celestials, immortal beings, they watch over mortal realms, and they guide people to their ever-afters. I hope you're with me still, because that's kind of the basic, that's the overall what's going on. Now, let's focus on our specific two characters so that we can kind of figure ourselves out within this big structure, right? So we focus on two characters, and like I said, there's two different types of, the celestials. There are the guardians and the misfortunes. Our two characters are one of each, so kind of. Oh, do I get into that? Alright, let's say they represent one of each. So, the one who's representing the guardians, her name is Darling. She's adorable. I love her. She's plus size, black, queer, and she has bipolar disorder. It's called something different in the universe, but it's clarified in the before you read kind of section. It's clarified that it is representing bipolar disorder. And she is very outgoing. She's very comfortable in her own skin in general. She loves sparkly things. She loves honey and sweets. And she's a really fun fairy, And she's top of her class, and she worked really hard to get there, especially because technically she's not, by species, a guardian. She is a fairy. That's slightly different, and that's important to her story, but I think I'm not going to go too deeply into it because that might just lead to confusing you as I tell all these different details. I think that's something that is definitely a very important part of the story, but would be easier for you to read it than for me to tell it to you. So, she's representing the guardians as a fairy, and she worked really hard to get there. She's outgoing, and she's like ready to go. She's ready to change all the mortal realms for the better. She wants happily ever afters for a lot of people, and she thinks she can really enact real change if she is given the opportunity. So, that's Darling. Now representing our misfortunes. Again, these are the ones who kind of take people from going to bad endings and giving them more okay endings, So, our misfortune, his name is Calamity. You might call him Calam for short. Other people do in the book. So Calam, he's more rational thinking. He's not really one to stand in the spotlight. He prefers working from the shadows and kind of observing from afar. And he's very rational leaning, and that makes it so fun to see these two interact, because she's so bubbly and outgoing, and he's so rational and just, I'll get into their chemistry in a bit, though. he's wanting to break free from his family, because there's a lot of high expectations put on him. He's also top of his class, and he thinks he could really find stability elsewhere if he's given the chance to just, like, go somewhere else away from his family. He wants freedom. And he also, believes that he's doing the right thing in how he directs mortals. But, like, his motives are kind of mixed with, like, both influencing the world and mortal realms and stuff, as well as getting freedom for himself. That's important, because these two are pitted against each other. So they each have their own motives and their own ways of going about things. And whenever they graduate, there is one position open in this very important council that can affect all the mortal realms. And both of them have very strong reasons for wanting to get that position. So, what does the council do? They essentially say, okay, you two will compete for this one position. We will send you on the same exact mission. Well, to the same person. They are both assigned the same mortal. And they get to use their magic to a certain extent to guide this mortal to a certain type of ending. Now for Darling is assigned the mission to have this mortal, and this mortal's name is Lucy, by the way. So I'm just clarifying that so I can say Lucy now instead of the mortal. Darling needs to get or secure a happily ever after for Lucy. That's Darling's mission. Now, Calam's mission is to secure an ordinary ever after for Lucy. That's his mission. They're both trying to secure a better future for Lucy, but the way they go about it is different, because the ordinary ever after is stable, and it's guaranteeing that Lucy will survive and be okay, but she's not gonna really enjoy her life. She's not gonna feel love, because love is risky. It can lead to a happily ever after, or a miserable ever after, or an unhappily ever after. And it just, love is a big part of this story of kind of emphasizing that, love can lead to, like, chaos. It can lead to all kinds of endings, or different roads in life. And so Calam, the rational one, is going like, no, we gotta make sure she survives, and doesn't go to an unhappily ever after, even if it means she doesn't experience love, While Darling, on the other hand, is going, no, we have to, like, try to give her happiness and such. And so it's got a lot of interesting nuance in there where I wasn't sure I was going to really understand Calam's perspective, but by the end of the book I really did. And so that's a fun system that is set up of people having different, or the immortal beings having different ideas for what is good for a mortal life. So, that's the basic setup. To recap or summarize, these two immortal beings, Darling and Calamity, they are both competing for this one position to influence all the realms. And their mission is to influence Lucy, this mortal being, influence her toward a certain ever after. If Lucy, by the end of the 7 days of their mission, if Lucy ends up being on the path to a happily ever after, then Darling secures the position. And if Lucy, by the end of the 7 days, is directed toward an ordinary ever just there for work. And so they arrive at Lucy's bookstore, because Lucy owns a bookstore, and it's kind of run down. It's seen better days. Lucy herself is just kind of, she's existing, she's there, but she's just not really feeling alive, So the two of them arrive there, and they get to work. They start trying to, make the bookstore better, and they start trying to make connections within the community to get, everybody feeling better. And, the two of them, the main two, disagree the entire time about their methods, but at the same time, they still keep things relatively cordial, and I actually really love that about those two, because even though they are competing for the same position, they still respect each other from the beginning enough to where, yeah, they're rivals, but they don't play dirty. They really just both work hard to steer Lucy's ever after in the direction that they want. Yeah, so okay, I think that's essentially the premise, and I hope that wasn't too confusing with the way that I explained it. It's really well described and streamlined, I think, in the book, but as I'm trying to explain it, there's kind of a lot of terminology and stuff too, and I'm skipping over a lot of their backstories as well, which, plays into a part of their motivations and their characters as well. But again, that's something that you can read, if you want to. But what really sells the book for me is just the main two. They are absolutely so lovable. They are adorable. They work so well together. Their chemistry is amazing. Their banter is great. Their romance is adorable. They're so cute. And the character growth that the two of them experienced, it was so great. The two of them changing the other's perspective, super great. I absolutely loved seeing how the two of them changed with each other, and also just seeing their internal thoughts, because it's a dual perspective book. It goes back and forth between Darling's perspective and Kalam's perspective. It's so fun seeing the two of them fall for each other and kind of, well, they're resisting it, because they're competing against each other. It would be horrible for them to fall in love during that, but they do anyway. Also, though, in addition, they do make it clear that they're not really rushing their feelings. Yeah, they fall for each other, but they don't necessarily need to call it love, I guess, or at least not romantic love right away, especially because they're immortal beings. They have plenty of time to experience love beyond knowing each other for 7 days. So there's that. I do like that. I appreciate that the book kind of points out, yeah, this is kind of a fairy tale book, but these two aren't necessarily experiencing insta love. And so that's kind of fun. What else about those two do I want to point out? Because there's so much that's so adorable about them. I mentioned, with Darling having bipolar disorder too. Just not only I think it really good representation from what I know. Again, I don't have bipolar disorder, but from what I know, it's treated really compassionately in this book, and I love that, especially for the really stigmatized disorders. I have dissociative identity disorder, so it kind of gets clumped in with that bunch. But just the really compassionate take on it in this book was really nice, and seeing, somebody else fall in love with somebody with bipolar disorder and really model a good support system for them, that was super cool. also seeing medicine not be stigmatized and it just being like a normal and healthy thing, to take medicine to help with something like that. Super good. I love that. I love that modeling in books. I take medicine for depression and anxiety related stuff, and I definitely need it, and it's definitely helpful. It's not something that turns you into a different you or whatever. Well, I mean, it makes you feel better. That's it. It's medicine. It's what it does. So I loved seeing that in this book. I think that's a very specific, like, micro niche thing that I like seeing in books, especially science fiction, fantasy, speculative books, is just like, yeah, there's magic, but also the main character takes medicine for their mental health, or their condition. I love that. Was there anything else I was going to say on that? I suppose not right now. But I've talked a lot about, like, Darling and Kalam. I don't know why his name trips me up. Darling and Kalam. I've talked a lot about them. They are the main focus of the book, but Lucy is also a very important character as well. Lucy is a black queer girl, and she owns a bookstore. She's mortal, and she's, kind of feeling not the greatest, not the worst. She's just kind of stagnant in her life. She's got dreams that are unpursued, and art that she hasn't really taken up again in a while. So that's kind of where she is at the start of the book. And I feel like she's such a nice, like, grounding, reasonable character that kind of helps spotlight just how different, like, Darling and Kalam are in comparison to mortals, but also how different they are in comparison to each other. I really liked how Lucy just kind of became a good way of them showing their philosophies, I guess, if that makes any sense, or their different perspectives. Yeah. And just as for other characters too, I liked getting to know not just Lucy, but, like, kind of the whole community that she lives in. There was especially a character who was, like, unlikable, but, like, through Darling's compassion and understanding and trying to understand what it was that the unlikable character really wanted, the unlikable character set themselves on a path of redemption. And I thought that was super cool, because I wasn't sure where that was gonna go. But it seemed like a reasonable pace at which somebody could go from being kind of an antagonist or antagonistic figure in the community, being kind of snooty and wanting to be involved in everything, and arrogant, and just feeling like they're better than everybody else, but then kind of understanding, oh, this person is lonely and feels left out, and so they're trying to, like, they're going about it the wrong way and trying to insert themselves into the community, when really just what they need is to be a little less brash, less, like, put on less of a front, and just allow themselves to kind of intermingle with the community without trying to present themselves as more important than everybody else, that kind of thing. And as I was reading that, I was going, wow, that's a really nicely portrayed kind of redemption arc for somebody who, like, they're not a horrible person. They just, like, weren't feeling great about themselves or their community or anything. And just a few days, and and a mind shift kind of, or a mindset kind of shift, they're able to just sort of start going back onto a path that isn't so lonely or isn't so isolating or alienating even. And I really liked that portrayal. And let's see, was there anything else about the side cast characters that I wanted to say? Oh, I think just in terms of representation, I love when fantasy books, just have casual representation. And this one definitely does. There's a lot of black people in the cast. There are LGBT people in the cast. Queer relationships as well. And just, yeah, I thought, just it's always a fun time reading one of Alechia Dow's books, because you know that there's going to be just normalization of, black people and queer people just being there, disabilities as well. And so I really love that I feel like I can step into one of these books and go like, ah, yes, this feels welcoming, yeah. And I think just kind of some other notes I had as well. I would recommend this book to anybody who likes Cinderella retellings. This one is kind of a Cinderella retelling, but focusing on, if you focused on the fairy godmother, and gave her a whole, backstory like this, that's kind of Darling's perspective. Darling and Clam, in a way, actually. They're both kind of the fairy godmother, except just, two different versions. And, yeah, I guess that's what I would say about that. In addition to, this one I hesitate to say just because generally I try not to relate stuff to books that are not, that are books that I don't want to promote. However, I think in this case, it's a matter of, well, if you don't want to read this book that is by an author who has done some bad things, if you don't want to support that, try this. This, if you're looking for a specific trope that is well known to be in this problematic book, search for another book like this one. That's the kind of thing that sometimes I do. And in this case with this book, whenever I read this, especially the interaction between Darling and Clam, with them both being two sides of the same coin, of these immortal beings that are playing with this one mortal's life, or influencing it toward one way or another, it really did remind me of Good Omens, Aziraphale and Crowley, the way, just kind of their dynamic, and I've seen the first 2 seasons of the television adaptation. I have not read the book. By the time I'd even heard about the book, I heard about what the author did. Well, sorry, one of them. And so I don't want to promote that book, but I do want to say that if you like the sort of vibe of 2 celestial beings or 2 immortal beings that are kind of opposites, one sort of light, one sort of dark, and they're, trying to decide the fate of this mortal through their actions, it's kind of a similar sort of vibe. So if you miss that from Good Omens and you want to see that sort of trope elsewhere, but with, an author that's a good author as far as I know, then I would look here, because this was a very cute dynamic that I feel like I've missed and I haven't seen very often in other forms of media, and maybe it's out there quite a bit and I just haven't heard of it or haven't seen it. I don't know. But that's kind of just one of my notes that I had, that I thought it would be nice to point out for anybody else who might be kind of missing that dynamic but doesn't want to support that specific book, or franchise, however you want to put it. So yeah. Yeah. Okay. Was there anything else that I wanted to point out? Because that might be the last thing on my notes. Let me see. I believe so. I believe that was all that I had in my notes. I love this book so much. I love it so much. I hope that I can talk with other people about it at some point. I don't know. It was just so cute. Oh my gosh. It was so sad too, seeing that the first review that popped up on Goodreads of this book was somebody who thought that the LGBT stuff was too much, and that's why they gave it a 1-star review, because there wasn't LGBT in the content warning, which is wild, because that was on the internet a little while back. That was a trending thing among book social media. I remember people talking about, LGBT people do not need to be in a content warning. And then I just read this review from this wonderful book, or about this wonderful book, from somebody who thinks it should. No, that's awful. That's awful. I can't believe that's still, no, I can't believe it's still happening, but it's just so unfortunate. Anyway. And then somebody else was complaining that it was a young adult book. Like, you can figure out that it's a young adult book before you read it. Why bother? Why bother reading something you're not going to enjoy? Or that you know that you're not going to enjoy? So, anyway, that's kind of why I do reviews like this, of trying to tell people what to expect out of a book. At least I try to do it in kind of overall broad strokes, and what I think people might want to know about it. But me, mentioning representation notes, that's not me trying to say, here's content warnings. It's me trying to say, hey, if you're looking for representation of these people, or of these specific groups in a book, check out this book, But, I don't know, it's strange to me that that's apparently a point of contention for a lot of people. But it is what it is, and, well, if they don't check out the library book, that just leaves more copies for us to enjoy, right? So, anyway, I think that's all for now. And I appreciate you being here and listening. You are an awesome listener, and thank you for huddling in this corner with me while my ankle injury is still kind of healing up. We'll see if I stay in the corner or if I move. It's a little bit of a weird angle for me, but I don't know. We could try it more in the future. So yeah. Okay. Alright. I kind of moved around my ending outro stuff because I already thanked you for being an awesome listener. And now I'll say that I hope wherever you go next, whatever you do next, that it is fun and or relaxing and or worthwhile to you. And ideally all three.